Hello and welcome to this special edition of Hotline Live. I'm Andy Newport. I'm joined by Scott McDermott as we react to today's breaking news. Despite days of speculation, it seems Davide Ancelotti is no longer in the running to become the next manager of Rangers after deciding to follow his dad, Carlo, to Brazil. Scott, what do you make it? It's not what we were expecting earlier on this week when it seemed that Ancelotti Jr. was on his way to Ibrox.
First of all, I can't believe we're now doing Hotline Live overtime. Not expecting extra hours pay for this. I listened, quite surprised this morning just at kind of how quick that's happened. I mean, look, we were working on the story on losing track of the days, Monday night, and but I think it's clear Rangers had that Davide Ancelotti quite high up on their kind of wanted list. The word we were getting fucking inside the club was that obviously there was a few other people they wanted to speak to, but I think we're pretty certain that they did make contact with Ancelotti and there was serious interest there. And the word that I had heard was that he was keen to talk to them, and it was something that was of real interest to him. Obviously, with his dad leaving Real Madrid, he was seriously considering kind of branching out and becoming a manager on his own right. So we expected, obviously, that it would take a bit of time. There's negotiations. He's got to make a decision, weigh everything up. But just in terms of how quick it seems to have happened that he's decided not to follow Carlo into the Brazil job for the World Cup and almost delay his kind of club career as a manager. It is quite surprising, but I think we both agreed that at the time that Ancelotti, as much as it was a great name, would have been a massive gamble for Rangers. And I know a lot of fans certainly you see online, were getting excited about the name and what he might bring and what the future might hold, maybe the kind of players that he might be able to attract. But no, I think I said in the Hotline Live the other night, if I was looking at boxes to tick for a new Rangers manager, as much as Ancelotti's been at Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, Napoli, massive clubs, he didn't tick a lot of boxes for me in terms of what Rangers need at this moment in time. And I say this moment in time because that's crucial, because you need to look at the context and the environment, the kind of landscape in terms of where Rangers are at the moment. They are 4 in a row behind Celtic in terms of titles. They have, at the moment, before a takeover, certainly far less money in the bank. We know about Celtic's cash reserves due to Champions League money, and there could be more of that on the way, as well as potential player sales if you think of a Hatate or a Kun or whatever may go. So Rangers are playing catch up and they need somebody to come in and hit the ground running. And Barry Ferguson said it himself. We were at the press conference the other day. Rangers is not a project club, and I agree with him, especially not now when they're trying to play catch up with Celtic. So as much as there'll be punters out there disappointed that Ancelotti seems to be now out of the running, overall, I don't think it'll be a bad thing in terms of their search for a new manager.
I mean, it was just surprising, wasn't it, that his name was so highly sort of tipped. I mean, I know obviously that was driven a lot by the reports in Spain. I think I was on earlier on this week and saying, listen, these stories don't come from nowhere. If they're being reported by AS, if they're being reported by Marca, these are fairly reliable sources when you get these kind of stories. But for me, it always just felt an odd fit. I think there's so much to be done at Rangers this summer. There's going to be a huge turnaround. I think Barry Ferguson himself has spoken about the need for maybe as many as a dozen players in and a dozen players out at the club. To entrust that to a guy who, with the best will in the world, nobody has any idea how he would fare as a manager in his own right. He's been at some pretty huge clubs, but he's only there because of his dad. He'll picked up a lot. I've just written a piece for the website today talking about, he'll have had this, but he was highly rated at Everton by the people there. he's working the training ground, he's working special things like set pieces. But until he goes out on his own 2 feet, nobody can be sure of his proper managerial abilities. And a summer as important as this, when you've got new owners coming in, as I say, a huge turnaround in staff, and as you correctly point out, Celtic, well on their way to another long, lengthy run of titles. Is this really the time to be entrusting, the job to somebody who's a rookie as a third-line manager? I don't think it is.
It would be understandable if Davide Ancelotti came into Rangers. It would be totally understandable that it would take him time to settle into that job and settle into the environment. You think of Glasgow as a city, the old firm, the pressure and intensity that comes with that. Coming into Scottish football, which is completely different to anything that he's encountered before, maybe apart from Everton, but even the Premier League is completely different now to what the Scottish Premiership will be. So it's totally understandable that Ancelotti would need time. And if the American or prospective new American owners were coming in with that mindset to say, look, this is a long-term vision, we're signing a young up-and-coming coach, we want to give him time to bed in, we want him to build something, style of play, younger squad, that's fine. But that's then going to take 2 or 3 years to come to fruition, minimum. Rangers, I don't think, have that time in the eyes of the supporters, certainly. They need someone to come in and hit the ground running with the squad that's already there, deciding quickly who isn't up to it, and quickly getting guys in that can supplement the ones that are there that can take the club forward. And next season, Celtic going for 5 in a row. Might be Brendan Rodgers' last season at Celtic. Might not be, but if it is, he'll be so determined to get with every trophy again. I think 3-4 months into that so-called project, fans will be pulling the hair out their head again, thinking, what have we done here? For me, Rangers need an experienced manager with experience of British football, but with a real understanding of Rangers as a club, what it means, where it is right now as a club. And Ancelotti obviously doesn't tick any of those boxes.
So when you just look at the way that the 49ers are coming in, obviously now without, I think I've said this a couple of times on here, that without the 49ers and this takeover and Andrew Kavanagh coming to take over the club and take it in a new direction, I don't think there'll be much hope at all, if any, floating around the Rangers support right now. I think it would be a pretty disconsolate place to be, just because of the repeated beatings and bashings over the head that the Rangers support have taken over the last while. But obviously right now, the supporters are willing to trust, they're willing to put their faith in these new American owners coming in. But how essential is it that they get this decision right? Because the last thing they need is to see any faith they have that the supporters having them to be rock for day one. They have to get off to, as much as the new manager has to get off a flying start, the owners have to get off to a flying start as well.
100%. And it has to get done fairly quickly, because we've spoken about it so many times that the actual time scale here, I think you wrote the other day, it was like 70 days or something till Rangers' first Champions League qualifier. I mean, you've got a pre-season before that, and pre-season trip, games. It is going to go very quickly. And that's why
we're sitting here on the 16th of May. I reckon Rangers pre-season will be kicking off in 4 weeks from now, roughly around about this time. So this is what the time frame that they've got to work with.
Yep. And big decisions need to be made on players staying, players going out, new players brought in. We don't doubt that Kevin Fwell, the new sporting director, is obviously working away behind the scenes, but even he's not joined officially yet, has he, from Everton? So there was talk about, obviously, if Ancelotti came, he wouldn't be coming till after Brazil's first 2 games, which was mid-June, which seemed a long while. It seemed crazy as well, just in terms of having tried to get somebody in early. I just think needs must now, and whoever's, we're presuming that it's Patrick Stewart, Kevin Thelwell, we obviously helped for Greta Steinson, who's a kind of 49ers Enterprises kind of football consultant, advisor, whatever you want to call him. He will obviously have a big say and a big influence on it as well. But I think things have to get moving quickly. No, we're led to believe, having spoke to Ancelotti, they are speaking to other candidates, but it really has to kind of, no, they need to get it right, but they need to do it quickly, because it's so important that there's clarity there for the players, for Barry Ferguson as well, who's obviously already had a meeting with Thelwell. No, get into this last game on tomorrow. No, on Monday, I think there has to be real clarity on what direction this is going in, who the main candidates are, what type of manager they're looking for, and decisions are going to need to be made on players' futures.
I'm just wondering, I mean, when we were on here the other night, Keith Jackson, our colleague, likes to throw out these wee flyers and, theories. I'm just thinking, obviously it looks like Ancelotti's going to help his dad in Brazil. I think he was always tied into doing these two friendlies or these two games in June. As I maybe thinking, well, okay, maybe we'll go and do the first year and you could see him back at Ibrox perhaps next year. Does that then potentially open up a route for Barry to stay for the next 12 months? I mean, where are you on that? Do you see Barry perhaps this, given his odds of getting the job more? What was it? I'm just trying to find the quote that he said last night. Where was it? He said, still got one game to go on Saturday. We need to focus on that now. It's every day I want to change it. It's a privilege to be here, and it's not over yet. I mean, we were sitting after the press conference going, was that he had a wee twinkle in his eyes, he said that.
I was going to say, we kind of looked at each other, didn't we, at that moment. He said, I think he said, kind of, it's not over yet. Then he had a pause. Then he says, because we've got one game to go, and who knows what might happen.
You never know what's around the corner. You never know what's around.
And you're right, he had a wee smile on his face, as if he kind of knew something. And I don't know about you, know what I thought, Andy, on Wednesday night after he said that? I came away from that thinking, does he know that he's going to have a role to play here? No, even if it's not as manager, is there going to be a role for him? Now, previously I'd thought, once you've had a taste of it as a stand-in manager, you're not going to want
to. He's insistent. He's either manager or he's going back to the ambassadorial role. I can't. Can you see him really going in there as somebody else's number two?
I couldn't.
Especially if it's an Ancelotti and it was going to be
a
total unknown.
I couldn't before the other night, but it just made me think when he said it's not over. No, and almost in your mind, you've kind of thought, well, he's not going to get the manager's job full time. So what does that mean? Does it mean he'll have a role elsewhere? I don't know. Listen, I think Barry Ferguson's chances of being Rangers manager are actually increasing by the day. And because I think we're talking about timescales and that, I think the majority of fans want to see a new guy, and they want to the new ownership. No, they want a name. They want a proper manager in there. And by that, I don't mean Barry Ferguson's not a proper manager, but in terms of experience and having been around the block and been at big clubs and stuff like that. But I think as time goes on, and it is getting closer to pre-season and closer to the start of next season, I just wonder if a lot of punters will think, you know what, Barry's done okay. Against Celtic, which are obviously the huge games, he's done really well in terms of getting a win at Parkhead and then a draw at Ibrox. The Fenerbahce away game, the 3-1 victory, was obviously a big moment for him as well. I just wonder whether a lot more of them will be thinking, with a bit of backing and we're getting his own players in, he does tick a lot of the boxes I'm talking about in terms of knowing exactly what's required at the club, knowing what it takes to win there, knowing what it takes to claw back Celtic. I think one of the big things is you need to get a manager in who isn't fazed by going up against Brendan Rodgers. And I think we've already seen that won't affect Barry Ferguson at all. So do I think he'll get it at this stage? No, still leaning towards probably not. But you know what, Andy, I'm beginning to come into thinking that it might not be a bad thing, even if it was for a year or potentially longer. I think the situation Rangers are in at the moment is pretty unique. In the midst of a takeover, time against them, as I say, Celtic miles in front in almost every department. They need someone right away who knows exactly what's required, who knows that squad, who knows what they want to do. And Barry Ferguson ticks most of those boxes.
I think,
do you think?
Well, we've just been asked by our colleague Scott Burns, who's doing up the jury today for tomorrow's paper, who we thought, and I went with Marco Rose. I said that last week as well. I think, first of all, crucially, he's out of work. So there's, in terms of compensation packages, I think that's going to be a big thing. I think the days of Rangers paying to get hold of managers right now, I think they've got. I think if they've got any money to spend, that has to be spent on players. In a strange way, I think the recruitment of a manager is secondary to the recruitment of players, because as you've seen with this squad, it doesn't matter who you put in charge of it. It's you can put Pep Guardiola in charge of this group of players and you wouldn't get a tune at them. I think so. I went with Marco Rose. I think you look at him, I think he averages something like 2 points a game as a manager, which is fairly decent when you consider the clubs he's been at and the countries he's worked in. He's won trophies in Austria, he's won trophies in Germany, he's got big experience at being a club like Dortmund, who will have huge pressures, just like Ibrox. So I think that could be a sensible one. I know you tipped Sean Dyche last week in the paper. I watched his overlap interview with Gary Neville and Roy Keane, guys from Sky Sports. And I must admit, I hadn't previously thought that he would be the right fit. I thought, obviously, that kind of Brexit ball style of his, just lump it forward. I think, especially when Rangers are at home playing against, packed defences, they need perhaps a more subtle touch in terms of opening up defences. But then again, he's a couple of championship promotions he's had, so he's got experience of winning leagues, and he knows how to play a more defensive style, a more counter-attacking style, which is the kind of style that Rangers will have to operate when they play in Europe. So he's got that ability to play two different ways. So I could perhaps see him more. I give him more of a chance now after certainly today's news of perhaps being somebody that could come into the consideration.
I don't think Dyche would be a bad appointment, Andy, because again, he's used to British football. He will know all about Rangers as much as he's no work term, and he knows a lot of people in Scottish football. I know he's really friendly, for instance, with like Malky Mackay, who one call it that. I know Malky Mackay's been at Celtic, but knows Scottish football inside out, so we'd be able to tell Sean Dyche all about the pressures of Glasgow and everything it entails.
Even just that, the video yesterday on the Penalty Score, I mean, he talks repeatedly about Kevin Thelwell and how close they worked together at Everton and how he was even key to him getting appointed at Everton. So that just makes me think maybe he deserves to be more considered for this position than previously. Whether or not he's willing to, because he mentions how well paid you can get in the Premier League if you're one of these managers that gets brought in to be a firefighter. Clubs that will throw money at you if they think you're the guy that can get you. So there's that to be considered. I don't think Rangers are going to be off on Premier League wages, even
for that reason. Having worked with Thelwell, you'd be amazed if he wasn't on Rangers list. He's a new sporting director coming in. If he's worked alongside a guy like Dyche, who you say is out of work. So I'd be surprised if he wasn't on the list. The big question mark with Dyche, and you've touched on it there, is obviously style of playing. I was the same. I watched the overlap, and he made no bones about it. That is his style. It's pragmatic. It's normally 4-4-2. I don't doubt he can adapt and play different systems. As you say, it's not as if he's won leagues and got promotion, so he's obviously had to play attacking football at some point as well. But there is that perception of him as he's always fighting at the bottom of a league, which is obviously totally different to what he'd experience up here. So that would be the question mark. But I genuinely don't think it'd be a bad appointment. I take your point about Marco Rose. I think he's a really good coach, good manager. probably wrongly, in my head, whenever I think of Marco Rose, I just think of him as Leipzig manager, getting beat off Celtic and getting beat off Rangers in Europe. Is that right? I think
he was Dortmund manager when Rangers beat them, knocked them out in the
Right.
road. So
I just have this vision of him coming up against Celtic and Rangers and not coming out on top. So it kind of takes me away from him. I would worry that is that a kind of Philippe Clement style appointment. Do you know what I mean? I think I've said before on here, I think when Rangers went and got Clement, people were saying they had to go and get a winner, they had to go and get a big personality, somebody with stature and all that. I think they got that in Clement. I think the title successes he had in Belgium made him a really good candidate for Rangers, and yet look how that worked out. You flip that. I mean, Rangers have had almost every type of manager in the last few years. It feels like you think of Michael Beale as the kind of up and coming young coach, with bright ideas and stuff. That didn't work out either. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, you can argue, getting to a European final, winning a Scottish Cup, was actually relatively successful, but again, loses his job because results in the Scottish Premiership were nowhere near good enough in games against Celtic as well. So, listen, it's a really difficult appointment. This I don't envy the guys, whether it's Fwell, Patrick Stewart, Steinson, I don't envy them going to try and picking the right guy, try to tick as many of these boxes as they can. But I need to stick to what I've said all along. I think it has to be someone that understands the club and understands the environment. And there are no many guys out there like that. I mean, obviously Barry's one. Deitch would probably be another one because he has kind of background. But the question is, are they going to go down that route, or are they going to just cast the net far and wide and come up with an Ancelotti or someone of that ilk? Danny Rowe's been mentioned, or even guys down south have been mentioned, Russell Martin, Gary O'Neill, people like that. People with really kind of specific style, which is fine, that kind of idealism. But I just think you appoint a manager like that has to be at the right time. I don't think Rangers are at that stage at the moment.
Just finally, you and I are heading through Easter Road tomorrow for Rangers' final game of the season. Personally, I'm just hoping it's not going to end up like the last time Rangers finished the season off 5 each, red card. And I think I had about a 500 word limit for my match report that day, so I'm hoping it'll be a wee bit quieter. What do you think the Rangers support heading through there? What do you think their mindset will be? Is it just a thank God it's over, or do you think there will still be a wee bit of excitement heading into the summer on what's to come?
I tell you what, Andy, I mean, there's nothing riding on the game really, apart from a bit of pride. But Hibs are on cloud nine at the moment. Finishing third in the Premiership, into Europe, might be guaranteed group stage football next season. David Gray's riding the crest of a wave, given where they've come from, not to go and finish the season like this. So see if Rangers don't turn up at Easter Road and aren't at it, they could end up on the end of a sore one, because, as I say, might not mean that much in the grand scheme of things, but I think Hibs will be right up for this game. They'll want to finish the season on a real high. There's always been that rivalry, Hibs-Rangers anyway. Hibs love to go.
I want to make a point, because Rangers' record through there of late has been really good. Hibs haven't really managed to lay much of love on them. So
you're right. Rangers, they've always had Hibs recently, in recent years, they've tried to go at Rangers and make the game really open, and they've ended up just being picked off. And listen, that could happen again. Although I do think Hibs are a kind of sturdier outfit now, and given the form they're on, I'd be surprised if that happened. I think it'll be a really tough game for Rangers, and that's why I'm saying I think if they turn up, with a holiday head on and just thinking, look, let's just get out of here and get away, then they could end up in on the end of a bad defeat. Barry Ferguson will be determined that doesn't happen. If it's going to be his last game as Rangers manager, he'll want to finish on a real positive as well. Or even if he thinks he's still, which I'm sure he does, if he thinks he's still got a chance of getting the job, he'll want to show again his credentials by going there and getting a good victory. So it's strange because you say we're going there. There's not much riding in the game, but I actually think there'll be a lot to it. I actually think there'll be a wee bit of an edge to it for a final day game. So as I say, Rangers will need to be at it, and I'm sure Barry Ferguson will make sure they're up for it as well.
Well, you can all keep up to date with all the events from Easter Road tomorrow at Record Sport Online and in the paper. So as you say, finally, just to say thanks to you, Scott. Thanks for joining us this emergency extra time Hotline Live. You say, think this is going to become a regular, me and you doing this on a regular Friday afternoon?
If we go overtime for it, then fair enough. Can't see that happening, you know.
Brilliant. Right. Thanks everyone for watching. See you later.